Jewish Americans are under attack. And if you don't believe me, then I would say that you're not paying attention to the empirical record, which clearly states that they most certainly are. Especially if you are a Jewish American at a major or even a small American university, chances are you are most certainly under attack. If we look at the incidences that have risen out of American universities since the October 7th massacre that Hamas inflicted upon the people of Israel, you would probably be quite stunned to see the sheer volume of them. In fact, there are thousands upon thousands of incidences that are actually documented by places like the AmChain Initiative, whose links I will have in the comment section and in the description down below. But here are some of those incidences. For example, at Cooper Union, this is actually quite a famous incident. Jewish students were forced to barricade in the room of a library as pro-Palestinian protestors banged on the doors and tried to force themselves through. Now, there's a bunch of different narratives about what actually happened at Cooper Union, but according to student statements, that's actually what happened at Cooper Union. At Binghamton University, protesters declared that Israel is worse than Nazi Germany. And of course, that's absolutely, obviously, historically just not true. Students at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. projected pro-Hamas messaging onto campus buildings at night, including one message that read, "Glory to our martyrs." Of course, at Drexel University, this isn't just people saying things. At Drexel University, there is a suspicion that a Jewish student's dormitory was targeted by an anti-Jewish arsonist because the dormitory door had images of Israel and other Jewish symbology on them, and the Jewish student's family is known to have a member that serves in the IDF. I can keep going on and on and on. These are some very, very grisly incidences, which have also, in the case of Ohio State, resulted in some Jewish students getting bruised up and beaten up. And of course, at the same university in Drexel, there was actually anti-Semitic graffiti put onto the bathroom, a women's bathroom in an academic building, that read the words, "F the Jews," end quote. We have to really ask ourselves, why is this leftist tension, because it's predominantly coming from the left, why is this leftist tension joining forces with the Islamist worldview that has been opposing Jews for thousands of years? And why is it coming to a head in our society at this point in time? Many commentators on the right are keen to actually just focus entirely on the supposed connection between the woke left and the old world Islamist theocrats that wish to impose their order upon the West, and through mass migration and through other tools and facets that so many Western governments have willingly allowed to be used against them. They have basically succeeded in doing this across Europe. They're trying to do it in America, but that's a different story, different time. But I think this connection between woke and these old world Islamists is actually overstated, and is actually a reflection of a kind of intellectual mediocrity that has set upon the minds of so many analysts and commentators and people ever since the dawning of the woke age. Like I said on Twitter recently, wokeism is a single phenomenon, a single niche concept that exists in a vast world of thousands upon thousands of different ways of seeing politics, of seeing culture, of seeing society. Wokeism is not the overriding current by which everything in the world subsists. It is one single concept in a vast sea of other concepts. But some people are so comfortable reducing their thoughts to a simplified idea, so much so that when they become familiar with that idea, they will then cross-apply that idea to every single thing, even if that idea has absolutely no relation to the concept they're trying to analyze. And this sort of myopia is limiting the analysis of many people on this issue. The problem really is not the connection between Islamism and wokeism. The problem is, in my opinion, a fundamental tension between two civilizational perspectives, one embodied by the old world Islamism and one embodied by America and the West at large, particularly America. America is the fountain of this viewpoint, and that is the perspectives of the New World and the Old World. Old World Islamism puts significance in the hands of the government, and by doing that, they also, in a roundabout way, ordain the governments to be instituted by Allah. And they use the carnal methods of interacting with the world, which, by the way, theologically are not of God, because if there is a transcendent God who created the universe, he is above all those carnal methods. They use those to try to say they are actually embodying the will of God. This is what jihad is. Jihad is taking a carnal idea, a struggle, so to speak, a carnal idea, and trying to capture the vast transcendent idea of God within the bounds of that carnal idea. With just what I've stated so far, there's absolutely no way in the world you can simply say, oh, it's wokeism afoot. No, this is a deeper issue that goes back through thousands of years of understanding and theology and religion, which calls us to ask the question, how are these civilizational perspectives playing out, and what can we learn from them? My contention is, my friends, that the alliance between the left and old Islamism is largely an alliance of convenience, not mutual ideological affinity. For example, there was an incident where a leftist was talking about a topic relating to sexuality in front of a Muslim protester, and they were both there to protest against Israel. And the Muslim protester said, well, in our religion, we don't believe in that particular lifestyle. And that kind of shocked leftist protester.
He's trying to tell children that they're not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. They're not.
Okay, you're wrong.
Listen. In some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to respect that decision. 3 Abrahamic religions, yeah. LGBTQ. But in some religions,
which shows you there's not an ideological affinity. There's not a mutual sense of there being an oppressor and oppressed. Rather, there is a purely politically strategic moment of convenience that both groups benefit from. Old World Islamism, at the very core of what it believes, is anti-Jewish, and for thousands of years has been calling for the extermination of the Jewish people, and through the various instances of jihad that happened all the way back in the medieval times, the various attacks on Jerusalem where Jewish people have made their home for a very long time, by Islamic caliphates back in the olden days, we see this trend of hatred and conquest and violence from the Old World Islamists against Jewish people happening continuously. It's not new. It didn't happen in the past 100 years. It didn't happen after the 1940s when Israel was established. No, it's been happening for thousands of years. Or rather, hundreds of years, thousands of years, whatever. It's been happening for a very, very, very long time. Leftism, of course, has a foe in Israel because they have a heart for class-based distinctions. And of course, Israel is seen as a sort of bourgeois oppressor class. That is true. But the Islamists have a deeper and more visceral hatred of Judaism and of that entire sphere. But both of these sides fall to the sin of collective judgment. And this is truly what I want to get into today. The reason why so many Jewish students are under attack in America is because of the sin of collective judgment, the inability or the unwillingness to distinguish between political abstract ideas and actual tangible people that are impacted by those ideas. For example, many leftists have this idea of Jewish people and this idea of Israel that is in the abstract. They have this idea of Zionism that is in the abstract. And what they proceed to do, if you support a particular position which lines up with their idea, they will subsume not just your position, but they will completely subsume you and your humanity as a person beneath their perspective of this position, and they will treat you the same way they treat this position. They will treat you with disrespect, they will treat you with derision, and they will treat you with contention. When your philosophy is inherently built off of rejecting a view of human nature that acknowledges the individual man, but it's built off of accepting and pushing this idea that man's nature is constructed by society, it's significantly influenced by society. This was the sin of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who in his Social Contract basically said that man is born free but is everywhere in chains. He is good in nature, but when he comes into society, society messes him up. And the Rousseauian conceit just went all throughout history, culminated in the Progressive Era in the United States, and then as a foundation led to the increase of central planning and authoritarianism and the creation of the so-called permanent state, which currently defines the American political landscape as we know it. It was an import of Rousseauian and other European ideas from Europe into the country. So going all the way back to that, this is where leftism gets its perspective of the human man. That's what they see people as things, clay molded by institutions, not preset beings governed by natural law and internal functions and existing in an objective world that is knowable. The Islamist sees things in a much more, even more mystical way, if you can believe it. The Islamist certainly sees things in a sort of binary. The old world Islamist sees things, sees the infidels, and they see the blessed peoples. The infidels are the enemies of God. The enemies of God are those who jihad must happen against. And there are many verses in the Quran that says, go ahead and do things to Jews. There's plenty of verses that actually say that. Now, I'm not saying that every Muslim is anti-Semitic. That's not true at all. There are plenty of Muslims that are not. But we're not talking about people here. We're talking about texts. And in the text, there are certain principles that are clear, that are evident, and that are concerning. These are two different worldviews. The Islamist does not believe that the institutions make you. The Islamist does believe that the transcendent makes you, but the Islamist does believe that the institutions have a duty to uphold the Sharia, uphold the law of God, and they must do so on pain of being disobedient to the transcendent. Well, leftists don't have a viewpoint like that. Leftism, in its current form, in its progressive form, is actually rather materialistic. It has to deny the transcendent in order for its policy prescriptions to make any sense whatsoever. Because if you consider the transcendent, you have to also consider the reflection of the transcendent, of the God in human beings, which would then mean you have to consider man's ability to reason, man's ability to be social, man's ability for free will. And if you reject all this stuff, or if you reject half of this stuff, like many leftists do, many leftists reject free will as an argument for moral duty and things like that. Leftists like Peter Singer just say, no, you are bound by simply existing. You're not bound by what your will creates or who it's connected to. If they reject that, they would also reject the image of God that many Christians believe is the case. But I mentioned those civilizational perspectives, the old world versus the new world. The old world saw man in the frame of status, in the frame of his group designation. But the new world saw man as a fully capable, being realized individual human being with spiritual value, who has to be the primary consideration of all ethical and political action, at least the first consideration of all ethical and political action, if those actions are to be just, and if those actions are to lead to the best kind of societies. This is a radical perspective that has only been entertained seriously by one single nation, America, in the past 280 plus years. A vast majority of human history looked very much like Islamic theocracies, looked very much like monarchies that believed in the divine right of kings and believed in serfdom, looked very much like the caste system in India. The vast majority of human history looked very much like that. But the new world not only unleashed the truth about human nature, it unleashed progress and advancement unlike anything the world saw in thousands of years of laboring under terrible ideas. But the old world has unfortunately invaded America. The old world has unfortunately rooted itself in the West. When you have anti-Jewish protesters in the streets of Sydney saying, "Gas the Jews," end quote, when you have anti-Semitic protesters saying, glory to our martyrs. When you have anti-Semitic protesters writing graffiti against Jewish people, when you have Jewish students being attacked, and Jewish people being attacked, a Jewish shop owner in New York being attacked by Muslims simply for existing, you have an overall perspective that classifies these people on the basis of their status and on the basis of people throughout history. It was the old world that said that pogroms, institutionalized programs of violence orchestrated by governments, by collective mobs overtaken by reason, by people that political interests that just hated certain people. It was the old world that said all that was okay and is a legitimate use of a society's energy. It was the old world that saw concentration camps as appropriate places to place those you hate. It was the old world that saw the enemies of the state, the enemies of the theocracy, the enemies of the authority to be worthy of nothing but death and not consideration. It was the old world that dehumanized people with the abuse of the intellect, with intellectual malpractice, intellectual wizardry, and it's the old world that continues to plague Jewish Americans to this very day. This is a problem of moral education. It's not just a problem of whatever, wokeism, whatever. This is a problem of moral education that comes down to civilizational attitudes. And until we can recognize that, no amount of hand-wringing or condemnation will be able to fix this issue. Until the West is willing to recognize that old world radical Islamism is a virus, it is an evil ideology that hates certain people, and that literally built into it is antisemitism, the New World will not be able to grapple with this threat in a substantive way. Until we are willing to say that multiculturalism, this idea that all cultures are equal by virtue of simply existing, which ignores their spiritual components, i.e. their values, if we continue to say that multiculturalism is the standard and not pluralism, we cannot fight this in a substantive way. The more we continue to allow racial identitarians who already hate Jewish people, who use the pro-Palestinian narrative to attack Jewish people in immoral ways, the more we continue to allow them to speak without fighting back with our words, not with force, but with our words in a substantive way, we won't be able to actually deal with this. We have to be able to deal with this, but that requires moral conviction, my friends. That requires understanding the context in which we're in, and to do that, that requires a mild understanding of philosophy and the ideas that are percolating in our atmosphere right now. My heart goes out to the Jewish people. And by the way, me saying that statement does not mean I support a conflict or a political party or whatever. A lot of people, their senses have been dulled by the algorithms and by modern day political thinking, which is mediocre in almost all of its ways, to the sense that they have been forced to think by their dulled senses that if someone supports the Jewish people, they must also hate somebody else, which is not the case. I hate no one. But I also understand that there is a particular group of people that are being attacked, uniquely attacked just for existing. And in that context, their attackers should be condemned, justice should rain down, and we should understand the context in which they are being attacked. I am not ashamed for standing up for Jewish Americans or any Jewish person around the world who is at the receiving end of overall brutality given to them by a system that says that if you oppose this rigidity of law, you are therefore infidel and therefore you must die. I am going to stand by the Jewish people who are under that system. I'm going to stand by the Jewish people who had to deal with hundreds upon hundreds of pogroms throughout the world, throughout world history, in the old Russian Empire before the communists took over, and so many other places. All over misunderstandings and outright prejudice. I'm going to defend them against the modern day anti-Semites that try to use similar kinds of thinking to indict Jewish people for their achievement. In my opinion, we should be celebrating the fact that Jewish people have managed to achieve so much in this world despite all of the stuff they've had to endure. That's amazing. Most human beings could not have endured a tenth of what the Jewish people have had to endure without breaking down and faltering and falling. And yet these people have survived time and time and time and time again. I will defend them against the anti-Semites, the white nationalists, the woke leftists or whatever, the radical old world Islamists, the old world in general that seek to destroy them in this new world. It is my moral duty to speak up against lies and falsehood when I see it. And I will not apologize for that. And if you think that makes me a warmonger, then you can just... I was going to curse. You can just click that little X on top of your screen and stop listening to me. Because my soul is not for sale. My integrity is not for sale. My conviction is not for sale. People are being persecuted under the auspices, under the banner of false ideas. And some people want me to sit by and be morally neutral and cross my legs and just, oh, I'm neutral. Oh, well, you know, I'm a both sides person. Both sides are bad. No. There is no both sides when it comes to the unequivocal hatred of people that they've suffered for years. There is one side to that, and that is the side of the righteous. Your opinions on war and the Israel-Palestine conflict, whatever, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the moral duty that we all have to defend innocent people from falsehood and lies whenever we see it. And we can start by understanding the context we exist in. My friends, the old world's on the march. And the old world is just not in the version of old world Islamism. It's also in the version of communism and socialism and theocracy and a bunch of other systems that are rising up and creeping up in our modern world. We all have to take a stand. And we all have to commit ourselves to the ideas that best allow human prosperity to happen and also best allow man to be aligned with the moral right principles by which the very existence of society preserved by justice is made possible. Natural law, individualism, pluralism, reason as a value, seeing people for their spiritual dignity, eschewing collective judgments, voluntary cooperation. We must stand up for these values wherever they are under assault, whether it be from old world Islamists or whether it be from people who simply have allowed their passions to overtake them and take them to a place that is very dangerous. My friends, if you guys want to help me get my message out there, like this video, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Be sure to also, if you want to, donate to me on Patreon, PayPal, Locals, ChristianWatson@Locals.com. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted. I love you guys so much, and please, 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 stay pensive. Bye, everyone.